Welcome back. In this segment I'm going to discuss about HTML elements. So as we said earlier that every time we talk about HTML, it is made up of what we call the tags. So those tags is what we call the elements. So those are what we call the HTML elements. Okay, so in this segment we are going to discuss types of HTML elements, and also we'll talk about how to mark up language, how to mark up text in your web page. And there in this particular space we'll be talking about three main markup elements that you can to use in your HTML. So there is a difference between HTML tags and text formatting tags. Okay, so when you talk about the HTML elements, we talk about these are the main, let me say these are the main elements that you need to have. But when you talk about text formatting, these are the elements that can be used just to enhance the appearance of your text or your content. So we'll be able to look at this as we go further, and you can be able to see the difference between the two. Now in this space, when you talk about HTML elements, basically you say that these are the building blocks of HTML documents. So I've said that HTML is made up of these HTML is made up of these HTML elements, and therefore there is no way you can be able to display a web document without having these elements, because they are the ones that are in charge of creating the web page. Now each HTML element is represented by a tag. I've already explained about this, and I've said that HTML tags, these are the ones that enable to show you that this is a markup language, because without these tags it means that it is not a markup language, and therefore you need to include those tags. Now what makes a tag? What makes this to be called a tag? So every time you talk about a tag, you need to make sure that you have the opening angle bracket, and then you put inside there the element, and then you close the angle bracket. So this makes what we call a tag. And then we said, as we studied earlier, that every time we talk about the opening tag, we have also what we call the closing tag. So this is the difference between these two. We have got this is an opening tag, and this is the closing tag. So what you are interested with is the content, the element. The element in this case is a P. So we are going to explain what P is as we go further. But I just wanted you to understand, every time we talk about a tag, it is made up of the angle bracket and closing the element in it. Okay, now there are two types of tags. We have what we call the block elements, and then we have the inline element. Now a block element, basically it has got the following properties. One is that the default behavior of a block element is that it takes the entire width. That is one of the feature of a block element. It takes the entire width. Then we have what we call the second feature that also makes up the block elements, what we call the width and the height. So when you say that with the block element you can set the width and the height of your document. Okay, so examples of these block elements, we have what we call the div, the division, we have the paragraph, we have got the headings, we have got the unordered list, we have got the list element, we have got the section, article, header, footer, etc. So these elements that I've just mentioned earlier there, it has got those two features. One, it can be able to take up the entire width of the available and start on a new line. Okay, then we have got the width and the height. You can set this width and the height of these block elements you have just stated above. Now another thing that you can be able to mention about the block elements is about their margin, padding, and borders. So with the block elements, have got full control over the margin. So with the block elements, you can be able to control the margin, you can be able to control the padding and the borders around it. Okay. Now with the block elements again, you can be able to do what we call nesting. So with the nesting, basically you can say one block element can contain another block element or another inline element. So examples of nesting of block elements is what we call the div. So you can say that a div is a block element, but inside the div section you can have the paragraph. Inside the div you can be able to have an ordered list, and so on and so forth. So that one makes it more of nesting. Then another type is what we call the inline elements. So the inline elements, it has got the following behavior. One of the behavior is that an inline element occupies only the space necessary for their content. So it doesn't occupy the entire width, but basically it just takes up the space that is fit for the content. Then the width and the height, you cannot be able to say the width and the height of this. So you cannot say that strong width is 200 and then height is this. So you cannot be able to put the width and the height in it. Another thing that you can say about the another thing you can say about the inline element is that with the inline element is that you do not have full control over the margin, the padding, and the borders. Okay, so you don't have full control over these features. Then another one is that nesting, you cannot be able to do nesting. You cannot be able to nest block elements inside the inline elements. So it's not possible, but it can contain other inline elements. So the only thing that is being prohibited is that you cannot be able to say that a block element can be inserted inside the inline element. It's not possible. Okay, but you can be able to insert multiple inline element inside another inline element. So that is possible. And so examples of these, we have things like strong is meant to make the text darker. Okay, so EM is meant to do the emphasis. So those are some of the examples of inline elements that you can be able to use in this space. Another thing that we can say that every time you talk about these elements, you can be able to say that we have got, and in summary, these are some of the elements that we have already learned so far. We have the body. So what it means by body basically, we looked at it and we say that it is found in the HTML structure, and it identifies the body of the document. You have talked about the head, we talked about the HTML, talked about the meta, we talked about the title in our previous video. So if you missed it, kindly go to the description section and you can go to that folder, to that video, and watch it again. Now the last thing that we want to look at in this particular segment is the markup. So when you talk about markup, basically it means that now you are going to apply these HTML tags into your document. Now paragraphs is one of the main things or main content that we write in our HTML web page. Okay, so it's one of the content. You cannot be able to have a web page without paragraph. Another thing that cannot miss in the paragraph is the heading. Another thing that cannot miss in the web page is the heading. So you can't work without the heading. Another thing that cannot work is without the underline. Sometimes you just want to draw some separation between a certain section and another section. So you need to have an underline. Maybe you want to make sure that people to understand that this is a heading. You can be able to put an underline on it, and so on and so forth. Another thing that you cannot miss is the break. You cannot miss the line breaks inside your paragraphs and your web document. And therefore those are some of the things that makes up what we call the text markup. Okay, now talking about the paragraph, a paragraph can only be identified through what we call the P. So you have the opening angle bracket, opening P, a paragraph element. So this one is make sure that it is embedded inside the opening angle bracket and the closing angle bracket. You put there P inside there, and then you have the closing paragraph tag, and that is the angle bracket, then a / and then P, and then you close the bracket. And then finally another one is the heading. So when you talk about the heading, we have 6 headings. So we have 6 headings. So when you talk about 6 headings, I can just pull it up a little bit so that I can see that every time we talk about those headings, we have H1 to H6. So H1 is the one that is more bigger. H1 is the most bigger. Then as you go down to H6, the more it continues being smaller and smaller and smaller. So for instance, if I write this in my VS Code here, for example, I just write this small code here. Let me just go back. So I want to write this here. and I just say that h1. So this is my h1 tag. Then I can just write inside there, for example, a statement like my big heading, but the same text, I just want to copy it 6 times. So I just want to copy it, paste it here, 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 and then finally there. So I can just change here to be h2. I can change this one to be h2 like that, then go here, change it to h3 like that. Yeah, so just change to h3 here. Okay, so I've been able to complete up to h6. I've just completed up to h6. This side I've also been able to close the same. So if I just do a live preview, here, Control S, I just do Control S, and then I do a live preview. I right click here, and then I just show preview. So you'll see that this is how your headings are going to look like. We have started with the biggest, and then we have ended with the smallest. So the more you go down, when you go to starting from h1, it is the biggest, but as you go down to the h6, you can realize it's too small there. Okay, then you can also be able to see the difference when you add the paragraph. You can just say that my first paragraph is also something that you have just looked at right now. So when I save this and I then just refresh this, you can see the paragraph the way it appears. There is a difference between the paragraph and the heading. So you can see that every time we talk about the heading, there is some thick line around it. You can see some thick line. Okay, so it is something thick, but in this case, when you talk about the paragraph, it's very thin. You can see the way it is. Okay, so that's the difference between the heading and the paragraph. Another thing that we should be able to look at just right now, that you talk about another markup, how to mark up text using what you call the break. So for example, I want to add another paragraph down here. So what I need to do, I can add the BR stand for break, then the /, and then you close the angle bracket. So by so doing, if I, for instance, I write another statement in front here, P my second paragraph. So by so doing, you realize that when I save this and then I refresh my page, automatically you can see I have written this statement in one line, but it is appearing in separate lines. Why? Because of break. So break is the one that enables you to move to the next line. That's what it means by break. Now, for example, I want to put some horizontal line between the first paragraph and the second paragraph. It's very simple. Basically, you just use what you call the HR. So the HR means horizontal rule. So it's meant to draw a line separating the two sections. So we have the paragraph at the top and then the paragraph at the bottom. You can see it has been implemented exactly at that particular step. Okay, so those are some of the basic HTML elements that you should know. As we are going further, we'll be able to discuss more of them. We have got what we call the HTML5, advanced HTML5 elements. We are going to look at a different segment as we go further. Okay, so I can stop there for now, but if you can support me by subscribing to my YouTube channel, I really appreciate. Thank you so much, and bye bye for now.